Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. The Amityville Horror. The Amityville Horror is a book by American author Jay Anson published in September 1977. It is also the basis of a series of films released from 1979 onwards. The book is claimed to be based on the paranormal experiences of the Lutz family but has led to controversy and lawsuits over its truthfulness. Historical basis. On November 13, 1974, Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family at 112 Ocean Avenue, a large Dutch colonial house situated in a suburban neighborhood in Amityville, on the South Shore of Long Island, New York. He was convicted of second-degree murder in November 1975. In December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved into the house. After 28 days, the Lutzes left the house claiming to have been terrorized by paranormal phenomena while living there. Plot. The book, purportedly based on a true story, describes the house at 112 Ocean Avenue as remaining empty for 13 months after the DeFeo murders. In December 1975, George and Kathleen Lutz bought the house for what was considered to be a bargain price of $80,000. The 5-bedroom house was built in Dutch colonial style and had a distinctive gambrel roof. It also had a swimming pool and a boathouse, as it was located on a canal. George and Kathy married in July 1975 and each had their own homes, but they wanted to start fresh with a new property. Kathy had 3 children from a previous marriage: Daniel Chapter 9, Christopher 7, and Melissa 5. They also owned a crossbreed Malamute Labrador dog named Harry. During their first inspection of the house, the real estate broker told them about the DeFeo murders and asked if this would affect their decision. After discussing the matter, they decided that it was not a problem. The Lutz family moved in December 19, 1975. Much of the DeFeo family's furniture was still in the house because it was included for $400 as part of the deal. A friend of George Lutz learned about the history of the house and insisted on having it blessed. At the time, George was a non-practicing Methodist and had no experience of what this would entail. Kathy was a non-practicing Catholic and explained the process. George knew a Catholic priest named Father Ray who agreed to carry out the house blessing. Father Mancuso was a lawyer, judge of the Catholic court, and psychotherapist who lived at the local Sacred Heart Rectory. He arrived to perform the blessing while George and Kathy were unpacking their belongings on the afternoon of December 18, 1975, and went into the building to carry out the rites. When he flicked the first holy water and began to pray, he heard a masculine voice demand that he get out. When leaving the house, Father Mancuso did not mention this incident to either George or Kathy. On December 24, 1975, Father Mancuso called George Lutz and advised him to stay out of the second-floor room, where he had heard the mysterious voice, the former bedroom of Mark and John Matthew DeFeo that Kathy planned to use as a sewing room, but the call was cut short by static. Following his visit to the house, Father Mancuso allegedly developed a high fever and blisters on his hands similar to stigmata. At first, George and Kathy experienced nothing unusual in the house. Talking about their experiences subsequently, they reported that it was as if they were each living in a different house. Some of the experiences of the Lutz family at the house are described in the book as follows. After deciding that something was wrong with their house they could not explain rationally, George and Kathy Lutz carried out a blessing of their own on January 8, 1976. George held a silver crucifix while they both recited the Lord's Prayer, and while in the living room, George allegedly heard a chorus of voices asking them, "Will you stop?" By mid-January 1976, after another attempt at a house blessing by George and Kathy, they experienced what would turn out to be their final night in the house. The Lutzes declined to give a full account of the events that took place on this occasion, describing them as too frightening. After getting in touch with Father Mancuso, the Lutzes decided to take some belongings and stay at Kathy's mother's house in nearby Deer Park, New York, until they had sorted out the problems with the house. They claimed that the phenomena followed them there, with the final scene of Anson's book describing slime coming up the staircase towards them. On January 14, 1976, George and Kathy Lutz, with their 3 children and their dog Harry, left 112 Ocean Avenue, leaving all of their possessions behind. The next day, a mover came in to remove the possessions to send to the Lutzes. He reported no paranormal phenomena while inside the house. The book was written after Tam Mossman, an editor at the publishing house Prentice Hall, introduced George and Kathy Lutz to Jay Anson. The Lutzes did not work directly with Anson, but submitted the round 45 hours of tape-recorded recollections to him, which were used as the basis of the book. Estimates of the sales of the book are around 10 million copies from its numerous editions. Anson is said to have based the title of the Amityville Horror on the Dunwich Horror by H.P. Lovecraft, which was published in 1929. Criticism and controversy. One edition of the book has a quote from the review in the Los Angeles Times on the front cover stating, "A fascinating, frightening book, the scariest true story I have read in years," while the tagline states, "More hideously frightening than The Exorcist because it actually happened." The reference to The Exorcist is revealing because the 1973 film had been a box office success and had received generous media coverage. The role of Father Pecoraro in the story has been given considerable attention during the course of the lawsuits surrounding the case in the late 1970s. Father Pecoraro stated in an affidavit that his only contact with the Lutzes concerning the matter had been by telephone. Other accounts say that Father Pecoraro did visit the house but experienced nothing unusual there. Father Pecoraro gave what may have been his only on-camera interview about his recollections during a 1980 episode of In Search Of, a documentary series hosted by Leonard Nimoy. Father Pecoraro's face was obscured during the interview to preserve his anonymity. In the interview, he repeated the claim that he heard a voice saying, "Get out," but stopped short of giving it a paranormal origin. He also stated that he felt a slap on his face during the visit and that he did subsequently experience blistering on his hands. The claims of physical damage to the locks, doors and windows were rejected by Jim and Barbara Cromartie, who bought the house for $55,000 in March 1977. In a television interview filmed at the house for That's Incredible, Barbara Cromartie argued that they appeared to be the original items and had not been repaired. The That's Incredible feature also showed that the Red Room was a small closet in the basement and would have been known to the previous owners of the house because it was not concealed in any way. The claim made in Chapter 11 of the book that the house was built on a site where the local Shinnecock Indians had once abandoned the mentally ill and the dying was rejected by local Native American leaders. The claim of cloven hoof prints in the snow on January 1, 1976, was rejected by other researchers because weather records showed that there had been no snow in Amityville on that date. Neighbors reported nothing unusual during the time that the Lutzes were living there. Police officers are depicted visiting the house in the book and 1979 film, but records showed that the Lutzes did not call the police during the period that they were living on Ocean Avenue. There was no bar in Amityville called the Witch's Brew at the time. Ronald DeFeo, Jr. was a regular customer at Henry's Bar a short distance from 112 Ocean Avenue. Critics including Stephen Kaplan pointed out that changes were made to the book as it was reprinted in different editions. In the original hardcover edition, Father Peccary Ross' car is an old-time Ford, and he experiences an incident in which the hood flies up against the windshield while he is driving it. In later editions, the car is described as a Chevrolet Vega before reverting to a Ford. In May 1977, George and Kathy Lutz filed a lawsuit against William Weber, Paul Hoffman, Bernard Burton and Frederick Mars, along with Good Housekeeping magazine, the New York Sunday News, and the Hearst Corporation, all of which had published articles related to the hauntings. The Lutz's alleged invasion of privacy, misappropriation of names for trade purposes, and mental distress, and claimed $4.5 million in damages. Hoffman, Weber, and Burton immediately filed a countersuit for $2 million alleging fraud and breach of contract. The claims against the news corporations were dropped for lack of evidence, and the remainder of the lawsuit was heard by Brooklyn U.S. District Court Judge Jack B. Weinstein. In September 1979, Judge Weinstein dismissed the Lutz's claims, and observed in his ruling, "Based on what I have heard, it appears to me that, to a large extent, the book is a work of fiction, relying in a large part upon the suggestions of Mr. Weber." In the September 17, 1979 issue of People magazine, William Weber wrote, "I know this book is a hoax. We created this horror story over many bottles of wine." This refers to a meeting that Weber is said to have had with George and Kathy Lutz, during which they discussed what would later become the outline of Anson's book. Judge Weinstein also expressed concern about the conduct of William Weber and Bernard Burton relating to the affair, stating, "There is a very serious ethical question when lawyers become literary agents." George Lutz maintained that events in the book were mostly true and denied any suggestion of dishonesty on his part. In June 1979, George and Kathy Lutz took a polygraph test relating to their experiences at the house. The polygraph tests were performed by Chris Guggers and Michael Rice, who at the time were reportedly among the top 5 polygraph experts in America. The results, in Mr. Rice's opinion, did not indicate lying. In October 2000, the History Channel broadcast Amityville: The Haunting, an Amityville Horror hoax, a 2-part documentary made by horror screenwriter, producer Daniel Farron to mark the 25th anniversary of the case. George Lutz commented in an interview for the program, "I believe this has stayed alive for 25 years because it's a true story. It doesn't mean that everything that has ever been said about it is true. It's certainly not a hoax. It's real easy to call something a hoax. I wish it was. It's not." The debate about the accuracy of the Amityville Horror continues, and despite the lack of evidence to corroborate much of the story, it remains one of the most popular haunting accounts in American folklore. The various owners of the house, since the Lutz family left in 1976, have reported no problems while living there. James Cromartie, who bought the house in 1977 and lived there with his wife Barbara for 10 years, commented, "Nothing weird ever happened except for people coming by because of the book and the movie." Films. The Amityville Horror has been the subject of a series of films. The 1979 film, based on Jay Anson's novel, is the most well-known in the series. James Brolin and Margot Kidder portray the couple George and Kathy Lutz. The part of the priest who blesses the house was played by Academy Award-winning actor Rod Steiger. The first 3 Amityville films received a theatrical release, while the 4th film was made for television by NBC. The sequels from the 1990s were released direct-to-video and contained virtually no material relating to the Lutz family or the DeFeo murders. Instead, they concentrate on paranormal phenomena caused by cursed items supposedly linked to the house. One of the famous features of the Amityville horror films is the distinctive pumpkin head appearance of the house, which was created by two quarter-round windows on the third-floor attic level. The windows are often illuminated in the films, giving the appearance of malevolent eyes. The first three films were filmed at a house in Toms River, New Jersey, which had been converted to look like 112 Ocean Avenue after the authorities in Amityville denied permission for location filming. Although not all of the films in the Amityville horror series are set at the former Lutz home on Ocean Avenue, the distinctive Dutch colonial house is traditionally used as the main image in promotional material. In 2005, a remake of the original Amityville horror film was released, with the tagline "Catch 'em and kill 'em," referring to the claimed link between the house in Ocean Avenue and John Ketchum, whose name has been linked to witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts, but remains a controversial and elusive figure. This version exaggerates the isolation of 112 Ocean Avenue by depicting it as a remote house similar to the Overlook Hotel in Stephen King's The Shining. In reality, 112 Ocean Avenue is a suburban house within 50 feet of other houses in the neighborhood. The house used in the 2005 version was in Silver Lake, Wisconsin, while other location work was shot in nearby Antioch, Illinois. The child character Jody DeFeo, appearing in the film, is fictional and was not one of the victims of the shootings by Ronald DeFeo Jr. in November 1974. George Lutz described the 2005 remake as drivel and sued the makers for defamation, libel, and breach of contract. He objected particularly to the scene in the film where the male lead, named as George Lutz and played by Ryan Reynolds, is shown killing the family dog with an axe. The film also shows the George Lutz character building coffins for members of his own family. The defamation claim was dismissed by a Los Angeles court in November 2005, while other issues related to the lawsuit remained unresolved at the time of George Lutz's death. The documentary My Amityville Horror was released in March 2013. It featured interviews with Daniel Lutz, one of the children who lived in the house during the period on which the book and films are based. Lutz echoes the original story as told by his mother and stepfather. He also makes additional claims that both he and George Lutz were possessed, that George Lutz demonstrated telekinetic abilities, and strongly suggests that George dabbling in the occult may have initiated the demonic events. Legacy. Kathleen Teresa Lutz died of emphysema and George Lee Lutz died of heart disease. The couple had divorced in the late 1980s but remained on good terms. During the period in which the Lutz family was living at 112 Ocean Avenue, Dr. Stephen Kaplan, a self-styled vampirologist and ghost hunter, was called in to investigate the house. Kaplan and the Lutzes fell out after Kaplan said that he would expose any fraud that was found. Kaplan went on to write a critical book titled The Amityville Horror Conspiracy with his wife Roxanne Salch Kaplan. The book was published in 1995. On the night of March 6, 1976, the house was investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, a husband and wife team self-described as demonologists, together with a crew from the television station Channel 5 New York and reporter Michael Linder of WNEW-FM. During the course of the investigation, Gene Campbell took a series of infrared time-lapse photographs. One of the images allegedly showed a demonic boy with glowing eyes who was standing at the foot of a staircase. The photograph did not emerge into the public domain until 1979, when George and Kathy Lutz and Rod Steiger appeared on The Merv Griffin Show to promote the release of the first film. 112 Ocean Avenue was also investigated by the parapsychologist Hans Holzer. The Warrens and Holzer have suggested that the house is occupied by malevolent spirits due to its history. George Lutz registered the phrase "the Amityville Horror" as a trademark in 2002, and it is referred to as the Amityville Horror on his official website. Lutz claimed that the film produces embellished or fabricated events portrayed in the 1979 version and the 2005 remake. He also claimed that the producers of the 2005 film did not involve his family, and that they used his name without permission. The house known as 112 Ocean Avenue still exists, but it has been renovated and the address changed in order to discourage sightseers from visiting it. The famous quarter-round windows have been removed, and the house today looks considerably different from its depiction in the films. The house in Toms River, used as the location for the first 3 films, has also been modified for the same reason. For the 2005 film version, the house was renamed 412 Ocean Avenue. The 2005 film remake says that the basement of the Lutz home was built in 1692. But 112 Ocean Avenue, also known as High Hopes, was built around 1924 for John and Catherine Monahan. The local residents and authorities in Amityville, New York are unhappy with the attention that the Amityville Horror brings to the town and tend to decline requests to discuss it publicly. The website of the Amityville Historical Society makes no mention of the murders by Ronald DeFeo Jr. in 1974, the period that the Lutz family lived at 112 Ocean Avenue. When the History Channel made its documentary about the Amityville Horror in 2000, no member of the Historical Society would discuss the matter on camera. The episode of CSI NY first broadcast on October 31, 2007, was a Halloween edition based on the Amityville Horror. Entitled Boo, it features a house in Amityville where a family has died in circumstances similar to the DeFeo murders. In May 2010, the house was placed on the market with an asking price of $1.15 million. In August 2010, the house was sold to a local resident for $950,000. On August 21, 2010, the departing owner held a moving sale at the house, and hundreds of people turned up for the event. They were allowed to go inside the house but not to visit the upstairs rooms or the basement. Brought to you by WikiVidi.com. Would you like to know more?